Ghana is one of Africa's most stable of democracies on this continent. After 6 successful elections and 2 transitions from one political party to another, many observers do believe that the country's democracy is close to a democratic consolidation. But those who have been in power still contest the country's electoral processes. Is Ghana at its crossroads? My guest today has worked in diplomacy and in the civil society in Ghana, has been elected to the Ghanaian parliament under the banner of the National Democratic Congress. He as well has served in cabinet there as a minister and as well as the vice president of the nation before he was elected president of Ghana from 2012 to 2017. I am Samson Kasumba, and this is Nbs Face Off. My guest today is His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. Mr. President, you're welcome to Nbs Face Off.
Samson, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let's face off now. Many have said that the 2020 general election in Ghana did reveal a conspicuous lack of resolve to build consensus. Do you share in this view?
We've held several elections since 1992 in Ghana, and Ghana has become the gold standard for elections, and our electoral commission is prided as one of the best on the continent. And so there are several instances in which our commission has been deployed to assist build, stronger institutions in other democratic spaces in Africa. And we've gone from metal ballot boxes to transparent ballot boxes to photo ID cards to biometric registration and all that. And so we believe that our electoral commission has built enough capacity to be able to hold free and fair elections. Unfortunately, 2020 was not the same. A lot of things went wrong, and I can understand why they did. The president who came decided, upon a petition that was presented to him, to remove all the 3 electoral commissioners who had been in office. In the past, what had happened was an electoral commissioner retires, there are 3 of them, 1 chairman and 2 deputies, and there's a replacement. And so the institutional memory continues. Unfortunately, for the 2020 elections, the 3 commissioners who superintended the election were new. And so a lot of the institutional memory that had been garnered by the commission over the years, was actually disrupted. And so there were many mistakes they made.
Okay. You've been in that office. Do you understand that it is possible as president that you can act in good faith and nobody else understands?
Well, we expect that any commission would act in good faith, but then getting an election right is a collaboration between the commission and the stakeholders. The stakeholders are the political parties.
Okay.
And so we have an inter-party advisory committee which is supposed to build consensus between the political parties and the EC. Unfortunately, that didn't work properly in the last election. And that's why we had all the disagreements. But I think that we can build it right again.
Okay, let's go to your words. You called the election this brazen and shameless attack on our democracy. It seems as if it is the norm on this continent that those who lose election, i.e. opposition in Africa, will always oppose the election. In fact, when you won, somebody else opposed. When you lost, somebody else opposed. Is it the norm?
It isn't. My experience, 2016, I was the incumbent president. I lost the election, I conceded, and I congratulated my opponent, and I attended his inauguration. And so I have a track record of conceding elections if I was certain that they were free and fair.
Okay.
2020 was not the same.
So it's down to your track record
Yes.
that, to defend you, that when you think that they are free and fair, you concede. When you believe they are not, you challenge them.
Yeah, we did, and we did it legitimately. The Constitution says that if you disagree with the election of the results of an election, you go to the Supreme Court, which is what we did.
Okay.
Of course, we lost the Supreme Court case, and once we did, I said I respect the decision of the courts.
We'll get to the bit of the courts here, but still on that, Ghana is known for its stable democracy, but tensions did rise during the election, and unfortunately, as many cases have been seen in Africa, people were killed. You said the New Patriotic Party stole the vote. That's unfortunate. How do we get to the place where elections happen in Africa and it's almost certain people will have to die?
It's the first time that people died. We've had clean elections, no deaths. Elections have gone very well. For the first time, we have a government that deployed military in collation centers and in places that military were not supposed to be. The prime security for guarding our elections are the police service. And where they don't have enough numbers, they deploy the immigration, the fire service, and other paramilitary organizations. And they are the ones who superintend the elections. This was not the case. We had rogue elements who had been infiltrated into the military, and these were thugs from the militia of the ruling party. And they went into spaces they were not supposed to be. They terrorized people, and they killed 8 of our fellow Ghanaians. It's never happened before. This government has refused to investigate. The president has not even uttered one word of sympathy to the bereaved families. And so it was different in 2020. Everything has gone well till this particular election. And it's the first election that this current president has superintended. 2016, when he won, I superintended it. It went smoothly. Not one Ghanaian blood was shed. But when he superintended elections, 8 people died. And those people are crying for justice.
When he sits in that chair, hopefully soon, I'll put these questions to him, but maybe this before we go into our first break. How do you make sure, while conducting an election as an incumbent president, the nation doesn't deteriorate into chaos, meaning that people take advantage, while on the other hand, keeping civil liberties and democracy afloat? Because those who deploy the military in many cases do argue that they are doing so in the interest of national security, which can certainly be understood.
Ghanaians are very peaceful people and will not on their own create chaos in elections. And as president, we have what we call an election security committee. It's made up of the security services and national security. And they plan the deployment for election day, before, during, and after. And so when I was president, we did not interfere with the election security committee. They did their job. They deployed the security services. The soldiers or the armed forces, let me make a distinction here. We have the police service.
Yes.
And we have the other civil, para-security agencies. And then we have the armed forces. The armed forces are the armed forces, because they shoot first before they ask what's happening. And so what we do is we deploy them, but they don't go anywhere near polling stations. They are deployed in an encampment. When law and order breaks down and the police are unable to handle it, then the armed forces are called in. This is not the case with this election.
Okay.
The armed forces were present where they were not supposed to be.
Okay.
Yeah, and when there was some disorder that could probably be handled by the police service, they just opened fire and killed people.
Okay. We're going to a break, and when we come back from the break, my first question will be, as president, incumbent president going into an election, is it difficult to control yourself with the threat of losing an election looming? When we come back from the break. Welcome back to NBS Face Off. My name is Samson Kasumba, and my guest is His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, former president of Ghana. When you are preparing an election, you're an incumbent. The threat of losing an election is always there, because to a certain extent you have programs you want to continue with. How do you stop yourself from the excesses of retaining power at all costs?
You can win and you can lose. When you go into an election, you should be prepared for both. And so in 2016, when I went into that election, I prepared 2 speeches. One was a concession speech, and one was a victory speech. Unfortunately, I had to use the concession speech in 2016.
Is that painful?
You serve your country at the pleasure of your people. And based on their own assessment, if they think that somebody else should take over.
But when you know there are things you could have done to improve their situation and you lose, or they reject your proposals, at a personal level, it could be painful.
We have a new genre in our political space that it's not really just about your track record and what you did. I mean, if you ask Ghanaians today and you ask them to make an assessment of the 4 years I was in office, they'll tell you that I did a lot of transformation in the country, yes, especially in terms of infrastructure. But somebody comes, uses the social media space, he says I can do better than he did, and I'll transform the country in 18 months, and I mean, with a lot of sweet talk, and I mean, they vote you out. And so,
do you intend to run again?
What you do is you give it up, and then they'll learn, you know, and so Ghanaians are beginning to learn. I mean, they've seen 6 years so far, and we've run into debt. The economy is in crisis. You know, there's been nothing. I mean, our debt to GDP is above 80%. Okay. This government has borrowed in excess of 270 billion cedis, and there's nothing to show for it. No hospitals, no schools, no roads, nothing. You know.
But now that you say Ghanaians have learned, are they talking to you and sweet talking you into running again? And if they have, are you planning to run again? And how sure are you that the election won't be rigged?
I ran in 2020 after I lost in 2016, so I was the flag bearer for my party in 2020. After the election, we went to the Supreme Court, and we accepted the verdict. Our party is reorganizing, and it will culminate in choosing another presidential candidate. And if it does, you know, we'll prepare for the election in 2024. And I'm certain that NDC, that is my party, will win the next election.
Okay. And you're taking yourself out of that picture. Is that because you have decided that's it, you've served enough, and even if the party asks, it's a no?
No, the party decides. If the party thinks I should, why not?
But okay, so you know if they ask, you will?
Yeah, I mean, my country has given me so much.
Okay.
I mean, educated me, made me who I am. I'll not deprive the people of that choice if I have to. And so it depends on, you know, what the party thinks is best. Because for us, it's to win the election of 2024. Okay. And if we have to have a candidate other than me, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Well, somebody said politicians will always conceal their interests, even if you are talking to your party into having you as a candidate, you'd never say it on
Why
the show.
should I have been president before?
Okay.
I've been the flag bearer again. And so it's not about concealing my interests, but it's making sure that the democratic space is preserved. Okay. And that alternatives do exist for political parties.
The sight of soldiers in the Ghanaian parliament on January 7, 2021 was the first, and an unfortunate one for the country, has been seen elsewhere on the continent. How does it get to that?
Very unprecedented and very unfortunate. It should never ever happen again. And till now there's been no investigation to find out who gave that order to ask the police to come in. We have to ask the military to come in. We have a police post in the parliament precincts, and that police post has about 100 police officers posted to the precincts of parliament. And if there was any disorder, first you have the marshal's office. Marshal's office has security personnel employed in the marshal's office. If they were not able to bring stability, you know, in a situation within the precincts of parliament, the next call would have been for the police to come in. How a military detachment came onto the floor of parliament is an abuse of our democracy. And it's unfortunate that this government is not interested to find out who gave that instruction for the military to come in. But it was a dark day in Ghana's democracy, and it's my hope that it will never happen again.
As president, if that happens again, you've been before, what are those places where you say the use of force is absolutely necessary?
In that circumstance, the use of force probably would have been necessary. But I said, we have the Marshal's office, we have the police service in Parliament. I mean, how would soldiers fully armed with AK-47s come onto the floor of Parliament? It's unthinkable. And it was actually a day of shame for Ghana. Ghana is seen as one of the leading democracies in Africa. How military officers armed with AK-47s came into Parliament, onto the floor, to break up a brawl. I mean, it's most unfortunate. And I think that some investigation should have been conducted to find out how it happened, so that it doesn't happen in the future.
So if you ever get the chance again, do we hope that these are the investigations you plan to swing into action?
Yeah. Investigation into how 8 of our citizens were killed in an election. I mean, there's no statute of limitation on murder. And so if we do come into office, we're going to investigate and find out who gave the instruction to kill 8 people in our elections.
Now, those who are in office and those who probably are culpable, when they hear this, don't you think that they will do everything possible to stop you from getting back into office?
Well, it's for the people of Ghana to decide. It's not for them.
You were nicknamed Mr. Damso, something you also joked about when you had the opportunity to, and it was because of economic woes and power shortages on and off power and corruption scandals. Do you think it was an unfair label, even when you found it humorous?
Yeah, it was. Because the actual cause of what you're referring to is the energy crisis Ghana went through. The actual cause of the energy crisis was the lack of investment over the years by previous governments in generation. Ghana's consumption had been rising by about 12% per annum in terms of electricity consumption. But the investment in additional generation had been very slow. And so we got to a stage where we're demanding and consuming more electricity than we had generation. We had a Akosombo dam. We thought Akosombo would last forever. Unfortunately, it didn't. And so we were consuming like 2,600 megawatts, and our production was 2,300 megawatts.
Okay.
And so we had to go through a period of outages. Now, what did I do? I took responsibility. I didn't blame previous governments. I said, yes, you call me Mr. Dumso. I inherited this problem, but I take responsibility for it because you voted me into power to take responsibility and fix things. And so I said, I'm going to fix this. And by 2015, I had added an additional almost 3,000 megawatts to Ghana's generation. I was actually accused of putting in excess generation, more generation that we needed.
Okay.
But again today, let me tell you, we're consuming 2,600 megawatts. Today we're consuming almost 1,000 megawatts more.
Okay.
And so if I didn't put in that excess generation, we probably would have started having energy crisis again. Okay. And it's beginning to happen. Outages every day because the consumption has caught up with the amount of energy that is available. Okay. And we're beginning to have problems.
Thank you very much, and we'll take another break, and when we come back, we'll certainly be talking the judiciary. We'll also be talking African democracy in general and widely. It is Nbs Face Off. It is still Nbs Face Off, and I still do have my guest, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, former President of the Republic of Ghana. And let's talk African politics in general. Many African countries are struggling with the whole concept of democracy. Some say it is even alien to who we are. We come from chiefdoms and kingdoms, and it has also, unfortunately, been characterized by leaders who stay long in power. Some voted, others by use of force and state resources, helping themselves to those. Do you think, as a student of social psychology, that this is a problem for Africa?
You see, there's no one size fits all. And so everybody aspires to democracy and freedom. But we must look at our individual circumstances. There are countries where I wouldn't say they don't have democracy. What happens is every country learns democracy at its pace. You must go through those experiences. Ghana is where it is because we've had a lot of turbulence. We had Kwame Nkrumah, we had General Ankara, we had Afrifa, we had Buzia, we had General Achampong, we had Akufo, we had Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, and then Rawlings again, Kufuor. We've come through a learning experience. Ghana was one of the first countries to have a coup d'etat. And we've had military governments in and out. And so if we have a certain democratic culture today, it is based on the experience that we have been through. And so every country has its own, demographics. And based on that, aspires to learn democracy. Look at Gaddafi. Gaddafi was taken out by the Western powers. Look at what Libya is today. I think that Libyans would have preferred, the order and security that they enjoyed at that time than what they have today. Today, it's a war of tribal chieftains and all that. So I don't like to prescribe one size fits all for all countries. Countries must learn their democracy at their own pace.
Okay.
And so, Ghana, we are what we are because of what we've been through. And I don't say that our democracy should be a prescription for every country.
Okay.
Every country must aspire to democracy, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, people's ability to be able to freely move across their countries. These release the creative juices of people, and they allow countries to progress. And so every country must aspire to that, but must do that at its own pace.
Okay. Do you think as Africans, still as a student of social psychology, we've been able to develop an indigenous politics away from democracy as it has been handed to us by our distant cousins, the Caucasians?
I think that it should reflect in how we devolve governance to the local level, in a sense that we're able to spread development across the whole of our geographical entity. And so it is not as much just having the concept of democracy and freedom of expression and freedom of association and all that at the top, but it's also creating the substructures that allow some of the financial resources of our nation to devolve to the local level. What is the use of democracy if the fruits of growth do not devolve to the grassroots? In every part of this country, we must have a place where you have a local government office, you have a police station, you have a secondary school, you have a district hospital, you have, the basic things, you have electricity, you have access to water, you have telecommunications. That is what we should do to spread development across our country. Because when people live in a part of a country and all the development and growth is enjoyed by only a small number of people and in a small part of the country, other people in other parts of the country believe that they have no stake in the state. Okay. And so when there's an insurgency to destabilize the state, they get easy recruits because it says, what is the state doing for me?
Okay.
So it's not just the concept of democracy at the top in terms of the constitution and what it provides, but it's also about spreading the fruits of growth to all your people in any part of the country in which they are. So you must spread electricity, they must have access to light, they must have access to water, they must have access to healthcare. That is leadership.
Okay. You said Ghana was one of the first countries on the African continent to have a coup d'etat. They're back in vogue in West Africa. How did we get here, and how can we get out of this spiral? Of course, you thought we were done with them in the 70s and 80s. They seem to be back.
In West Africa, there's been a trigger for it. And for two of them, I can give a reason. And that is Mali and Burkina Faso. We're having a problem with the Sahelian belt. That is just after the Sahara Desert. You have the Sahel, then you have the savannah, then you have the forest area. Now in the Sahelian belt, the destabilization of Libya and the removal of Gaddafi released a lot of weapons which have infiltrated into the Sahel. And then aside from that, a lot of people who were defeated in Syria and Iraq, ISIS, have infiltrated into that belt. Of course, the people there have a grievance, and this is exactly what I was talking about.
Yes.
Because the countries in that area The development is to the south, and the north is underdeveloped. They don't have hospitals, they don't have schools. And so the indigenous people of those areas started an insurgency which has been infiltrated by ISIS and all the Al-Qaeda and all the other Islamic groups. And so now, I mean, they conduct raids and kill people, displace people. And so in Mali, the military felt that the civilian administration was not doing enough to protect the state. And so they decided to take over.
Okay.
In Burkina Faso, the same thing has happened. They believe that the insurgency was not being fought properly by the civilian administration, so they took over. Okay. In Guinea, it was a different case. Okay. In Guinea, the president changed the constitution and extended his term to a third term. And of course, people protested, people were gunned down, injured, and so the military took over.
I want to ask you this question. Some are of the school of thought that anyone, as long as they can garner popularity, can run a nation. You have run a nation for quite some time. Do you believe anyone can run a nation? And if not, why not? What makes the job such a difficult job?
It's a very tough job, and especially in Africa. Anyone can run a nation in Europe and America because the institutions exist and the institutions are predictable and strong. Not the same in Africa and the developing world. If you go to the US and you apply for a passport, it is said that you get it within a certain number of days and you receive your passport because the institutions are working. The institutions are old, they are tried and tested. In Africa, we're building those institutions. The institutions are not as strong as they are in the developed world. And so in the developed world, anybody can, you're president, all you do is policy making and all that.
Okay.
Those who run the state are actually the institutions and the heads of institutions. In Africa, it's not the same. You need to be hands-on. You need to find out if things are going the way they should. And so you become a taskmaster.
Okay.
Because you cannot just sit and enjoy the frills of the presidency and think that things will work out. You must make sure your policies are being implemented. Okay. And so it's a more difficult job in Africa and the developing countries than it is in the developed world.
Yeah, probably towards the end of the show, I'll also ask you, is that job a sweet job, at least to a certain extent, when we come back from the break? It is Nbs Face Off, and my guest is still the former president of Ghana, the name I gave. If you didn't get the name, then stick with the show. I'll repeat the name towards the end. Mr. President, what are the major impediments to economic growth and development on this continent?
Well, I think that every country and every continent must take advantage in respect of what it is comparatively good at. And so we must leverage our comparative advantage. And what do we have in Africa? We have sunlight, we have water, a lot of water, we have arable lands, we have natural resources. And that is what God blessed us with. And so, one, we must take advantage of that comparative advantage. Diversify our economies in case of agribusiness and all that. We must be producing food for the world. When they say there's a Ukraine-Russia war and it's going to create hunger in Africa, I mean, it's crazy. With the kind of land and water and sunlight we have here, why would Ukraine's wheat be a problem for us? You know, aside from that, we have gold, we have bauxite, we have everything. But the problem is, in the past, the thinking was that we don't have the technology to exploit those minerals. And so we needed people from other countries to come and exploit it for us. And when they come, they make agreements that give us like 5% royalties, then we'll pay you some income tax and something. So the bulk of the profit from these natural resources go outside. One, the technology is there, and we can buy that technology now. We don't need to sit and say we don't have the technology, somebody should come and mine it for us.
Okay.
And so one, we must get a bigger share of our natural resources. And two, we must process those natural resources locally. Why would we send tons of bauxite ore outside to go and produce alumina. And the alumina is used to produce aluminium, and then we import the aluminium back. Gold, I mean, Ghana was called the Gold Coast.
Absolutely.
So now the bulk of our gold is taken to India and to the Middle East, UAE, for processing. And if you look at the difference between processed gold when it's made into jewelry, and you look at that same gold as raw gold bullion, I mean, the bulk of the profit for that gold is being earned by people outside. And so we must take comparative advantage of what we have. And now it's not like in the colonial period where we didn't have the technology, we didn't have the capital. Now the capital is available. There are African equity firms that control billions of dollars that we can leverage to do a lot of these things ourselves.
Okay. But again, if all that is done, we'll still have to struggle with the monster that corruption is. You've been able to build some massive infrastructure projects in Ghana. I haven't been there, but the pictures I've seen of Ghana are very, very impressive. How have you been able to manage corruption in Ghana?
We have the institutions, we have the laws, we have the state institutions that fight corruption. But you need the human will, you need a political will to be able to do that. And so it's not about having the right set of laws and the agencies to do it, but it needs leadership to make sure that these organizations are working.
Okay.
Recently in Ghana, we set up what we call the Special Prosecutor's Office. Okay. It was the dream of this president to set it up. Before the Special Prosecutor came, we had the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, where if you found corruption, you could report and they would investigate. We had the Economic and Organized Crimes Office. We have the Criminal Investigations Department. There are several agencies that can investigate into cases of corruption. This president thought it wasn't enough. He brought the Special Prosecutor's Office.
Okay.
You won't believe that the government has obstructed this office, one, underfunded them. It sounded very romantic when he was suggesting it. But, I mean, there's been more corruption under this administration, even with the Special Prosecutor's Office, than when we had these other agencies. So it takes leadership and the political will.
Do you believe the judiciary in Ghana is independent?
No.
Why not?
It's not. You ask me if I believe. I don't believe it's independent.
Did it used to be when you were there?
Well, their reputation was much better than it is today.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Today, I mean, if you do a survey of political institutions and whether they are independent or they are neutral and doing their job properly, the judiciary comes very low.
Okay, you have oil, we have oil here. How do you manage oil? Or how have you managed it in a way that we can learn from if we can?
We learned from the best and the worst experiences. Nigeria is our neighbor. And as part of the government, you know, that ushered in first oil in 2010. I was the vice president. And our brothers in Nigeria were very generous in sharing their experiences about what didn't go well for them. Their negative experiences, they were very generous in sharing it with us. And then we also got the examples from Norway. Norway is reputed as one of the countries that has managed its oil the best. And so we got experience from the best and the worst. And it made us craft our oil regulations, our laws, how the revenue is managed and all that. And I think that for us, it has served us well. I think we have also shared experience with Uganda, because I know that several times, you know, some of our people have come to Uganda and Ugandans have come to Ghana to share the experience we have with regards to our oil management. It's one of the sectors where I think that we have a better management and control of that resource than we have in other areas. But that is because we had the opportunity of learning the experience of others who had it before us.
It seems unfortunate that Africans seem to find it easier to trade with probably China, Europe, or God knows where else, than to trade with themselves. How can we improve trade amongst ourselves as brothers and sisters? Because it seems as if those elsewhere don't even see the lines between us.
There are two issues. One is the infrastructure to enhance trade between us. It is easy for me to ship coffee from Uganda to UK than to ship coffee to Ghana.
Sadly.
Because that's how the trade pattern is. If I have a container of coffee, I'll be able to ship it quicker to the UK or to France or Netherlands than if I was shipping it to Ghana. It probably would have to go to Europe and then we put on another ship to come to West Africa.
Do you think the colonial masters structured us that way?
Exactly.
And we haven't woken up
exactly
to deconstruct that and reconstruct what we want and
exactly.
work for it?
One doesn't understand why there's no railroad from South Africa to Cairo. And so we could put Ugandan coffee on the rail and take it off at Burkina Faso and bring it by truck into Ghana. We don't have the infrastructure. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, like you said, the colonial masters, structured it like that. And so if we produce anything, our first thought is to send it to China or somewhere else other than to our individual countries. I mean, Ghana produces aluminium. We use some of it ourselves and we export the rest. A lot of it goes to Europe, and then Cameroon imports that same aluminium from Ghana into Cameroon. So it's the structure of our trade. Fortunately, we've passed the African Continental Free Trade Area, and it is my hope that we have the political will to implement it. East Africa is doing fantastic. In West Africa, we're a bit slow. And so I was joking with President Uhuru one of the times when I was president. And I said, look, if we're not getting our act together in West Africa, maybe we'll sign a pact with East Africa and Ghana will join the East African, trade area.
Well, you would be welcome.
Yes.
Yes.
Because
probably we'll have to rename it.
Yeah, we are a bit slow. And so it's East Africa Trade Area +1.
Okay.
I mean, we can always find a name for it.
Okay.
But, I mean, we just need to deconstruct the structure of our trade. And I think that we can do well.
Okay, and maybe the final two here is, what's the most beautiful thing about being former president?
What's beautiful about it? Well, you come out of all the protocol and the rigidities of office.
Okay.
You're free here. I probably wouldn't be here if I was president. I have good friends here, and I came to attend the Tana Forum in Ethiopia. And some of my friends said, why don't you come through Uganda on your way back? And I've had a wonderful 3 days. I'm sure if I was president, I don't have the time to just come and have a nice time with friends.
Okay.
So getting out of the rigidities of office, not too much protocol, and you just have a little more freedom than when you're in office.
And still on a lighter note, there must be something sweet about being His Excellency the President of a nation. What is it?
If you care about your nation and you work day and night to change the fortunes of your people, there's nothing sweet in the presidency. But if you just came to enjoy the perks of office, yeah, the perks are there.
Okay.
Free transport, free everything. You fly in a private jet, you do all those kinds of things. If you came to enjoy that office, yes, then without really caring how you transform your people, then you'll enjoy it. But if you came to work to transform your people, even when you are sitting in a private jet, you're not enjoying flying in that jet, you're thinking about, what can I do next to make life better for my people?
Okay.
At every moment, you're thinking and calling your ministers and asking what is happening. And it can be a very stressful office if you came for transformation. But, I mean, some people fight for the office of president just for the perks and the enjoyment and entitlement of it. Okay. Well, if that's what you did, then you probably will find it sweet.
Every job has its own frustrations, even mine, pleasant as it might be. Are there times in the night when you wake up and stuff is going on and you ask yourself, goodness me, what am I doing here as president?
Yeah. There are times when things are tough. And I experienced that. You called me Mr. Doomso. We had a crippling energy crisis. And I had sleepless nights because of that crisis. My energy minister and my finance minister were the most stressed ministers. I mean, there are times when I'm working and I'm thinking, and suddenly something comes to my mind about how we can solve some of those problems. And I take a phone and I call my energy minister, my power minister, and there's no response. And then I look at my time, and it's 2 a.m. in the morning. Of course, that poor guy must be asleep, but I forgot that he must be asleep.
Okay.
And so it's it's a tough job.
Okay.
If you want to do a good job.
Okay. Mine is also a tough one to a certain extent.
I can
but
tell.
it's certainly been a pleasure, Your Excellency John Dramani Mahama, former president of Ghana, and could be again, depending on what your political party decides. Until next time, this has been NBS Face Off.